All right, CES is finally over, thank God, and there were a lot of great announcements. I did a number of videos. I still have more videos I'm going to put out, so stay tuned. You don't want to miss anything. And one of the announcements made last week was from Samsung. Yes, Samsung is updating their Galaxy Book 5 lineup. Now, this is the Galaxy Book 4 Edge. This is the one running the Snapdragon X Elite from Qualcomm. We reviewed it. I'll leave a link in the description below for that review. I'll also leave a link to my review of the Galaxy Book 5 Pro 360, that 16-inch convertible running Intel's Lunar Lake. I did that about a couple of months ago. They announced it at IFA, and of course, we bought one and reviewed it. So again, links for all the reviews in the description below. What does Lunar Lake bring to the table? Better efficiency, better battery life. The Snapdragon Qualcomm version, of course, brings a lot of the same things, but of course, there may be some compatibility issues with x86 apps and driver issues. But for the most part, very, very successful products in the terms of what they set out to accomplish in the Gen 1 here, right? So what did they announce last week? Well, they announced the clamshell versions of the Galaxy Book 5 Pro, the non-360, and both a 14-inch and a 16-inch running Intel's Lunar Lake. Okay, so that means we're going to expect really good battery life. They're going to have the same dynamic AMOLED 2X displays. That, of course, gives you the 120 hertz refresh rate. Absolutely gorgeous. If it's anything like the one we see on here, we're in good shape in terms of the display. Certainly the star of the show. They're claiming up to 25 hours of battery life on the Galaxy Book 5 Pro, and then that's a 16-inch, and up to 21 hours on the 14-inch version. Remember, you can't get a 14-inch convertible Pro version anymore, so you'll have to go with the clamshell if you want a 14-inch Galaxy Book 5 Pro. Now, they also announced the Galaxy Book 5 non-Pro 360. So the Galaxy Book 5 360, and that is a full HD AMOLED display, 1920 by 1080. So that means you're going to get a lower resolution than the ones you're going to get on the Pro, which are 3K or 2880 by 1800. And it is also a 16:9 aspect ratio versus the 16:10 like we have here. So for those that want a 16:9, save a few bucks and don't mind having the shorter display in terms of the scrolling. You'll do a little bit more scrolling when it comes to web browsing, but it's going to be more optimized for consuming media as being 16:9. That is a benefit there. And having the lower resolution on that AMOLED display on the non-Pro version, you're going to get even better battery life, I anticipate, because it's also going to have the Lunar Lake processor. Now, Lunar Lake, what does that bring to the table? Well, if it's anything like what we saw on the 14 and 16-inch laptops that came into the studio, for the last few months or so, you're going to get better battery life, better efficiency. Now, it does have less cores, 8 threads versus the previous version. So you're going to get a less multi-core. But the truth is, I didn't see a noticeable difference, if at all, in real-world usage. In fact, I didn't notice it at all on a lot of the laptops that came in running Lunar Lake. What I did notice is that significant battery increase in terms of longevity, and that is certainly welcome. Now, it's not perfect, of course, with what they announced, because there are a lot of the same criticisms I had on the Galaxy Book 4 Edge, and this clamshell design is probably going to be the same criticisms I'm going to have on the Galaxy Book 5 Pro lineup. And it's going to be the shallow key travel in terms of the keyboard. You know, look, they're trying to compete with Apple, and I'm not the biggest fan of the MacBook Pro keyboard, so keep that in mind, or the MacBook Air, but it is better than this one. This is a very shallow key travel, reminds me of the 12-inch MacBook that we looked at years ago, that butterfly keyboard that was heavily criticized. In fact, I think there was class action lawsuits. They had to replace it many times, but Apple had a lot of trouble with it. Anyway, this reminds me of that. It's not terrible, but it's not my favorite. Let's be clear about that. It also has a numpad that is too condensed for my liking, and the layout is not what I would want in a touchpad, or in a numpad, especially if I'm going to do number crunching. So I kind of wish they just did without this. If they're going to do it like this, just do it without it. And then, of course, the touchpad. Let's talk about that for a moment. Now, one of the biggest criticisms I have at the price point is, if you want to be like Apple, well, why not put a haptic touchpad in like Apple does in their MacBook Air line as well as their MacBook Pro line? And they do some excellent, if not the best, haptic force pads or touchpads, whatever you want to call them, in their lineup. And I think Samsung missed the boat once again. I didn't hear anything in the announcement that they're moving to haptic touchpad. I'm assuming it's the same glass touchpad as this one as we have here. And don't get me wrong, it's still a very good touchpad. It's just not we're going to have the haptics that you get. So it takes it to another level, and I don't think you get it. Now, this is perfectly fine for scrolling, doing gestures. I had no issue in terms of its usability, but at that price point, come on, let's get a haptic touchpad on there. And I didn't see anything in the announcement to indicate that they did. My suggestion would be for Samsung to contact Sensal, who's been crushing it, I think, on a lot of the touchpads, including the upcoming 14-inch Lenovo ThinkPad X9 that some of you, I guess you want to call it controversial, but that I did use it a little bit when I met with Sensal, and I thought it was very good. Now, Sensal's not paying me or anything to say this. I'm just saying it would be a nice addition to this, and it will take it to another level. Kind of wish it did have that. Now, look, Samsung's trying to compete with Apple. Let's be clear. It seems from their designs, from their overall marketing strategy, so why not at least give us a touchpad? Now, the size of the touchpad's fine, but there you go. Now, the build quality is excellent on this. Obviously, all metal design, super thin and light. I mean, this thing is razor thin. I love the design. I'm not criticizing it, although it does have some pretty sharp edges, so it does dig into your palm of your hands when you are typing. But, you know, that's just a little nitpick here and there. But the overall build is excellent. Very MacBook-like in terms of the build, so I don't criticize the build. They did manage to reduce a little bit of that screen wobble that we had trouble with in previous versions, and we saw a much better display on this Galaxy Book 4 Edge, which carried over into the convertible that we looked at, less reflective. So the display is certainly the star of the show. I have no problems with the display. 120 hertz refresh rate. So again, 16 to 10 aspect ratio. Those are just some of the things that I noticed that I think are going to be carried over. Again, I'm not getting a review unit from Samsung. They're not giving me anything. I'm not going to their Unpacked event next week where they're going to announce the new S25 Ultra. Now, this is the S24 Ultra. This can, you can transfer your photos. There's a lot of the stuff that Apple has with their AirDrop and stuff like that. They have their own version and their ecosystem we could talk more about. You can go out and order this from Samsung. There is a pre-order, or not a pre-order, a reserve page where you can get more information, save $50, as well as save up to $500 in savings. I'm assuming that's with trade-ins, but again, I can't be certain. Again, I'm not getting any information from Samsung, so I'm just flying blind in a sense, like you are in a lot of ways. So, but I will leave a link to that reserve page so you can maybe sign up. It doesn't cost anything. And I'm not even sure if I'm getting a commission or anything on the sign up for the reserve through my affiliate link, but I just want to make sure I pass the savings on to you. I'm going to reserve mine and bring it into the studio once it becomes available. Again, I'm not getting a review unit, and I have no bone to pick with Samsung. If they don't want to send it to me, that's fine. I got a lot of views on my Samsung Galaxy Book lineup reviews that I've reviewed in the past, so it speaks for volume, it speaks for itself, right? So bottom line is, I'm looking forward to getting the Galaxy Book 5 Pro in the both the 14 and 16 inch variants, as well as the non-Pro 15.6 inch, because I want to see what the savings you get on the lower res display, the AMOLED Full HD, and I want to see, again, look, they're talking about 25 hours on the dynamic AMOLED 2X display here, which of course is the 16-inch, and up to 21 hours of battery on the 14-inch. So there are some battery savings here, or battery longevity, that you're going to get from Lunar Lake. The benefit is certainly there, and I think it certainly outweighs any performance issues you might have. Again, I didn't have any on the Lunar Lake coming here to date on any of the other devices that we saw on the channel. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I'll leave links to my reviews of the previous versions I did on this in the description below, and I'll leave a link to that reserve where you can save $50 and as well as up to $500 in savings, whatever that means from Samsung. Again, I'll pass that along to you. Check out the link in the description below. That being said, a lot more to come. I still have other videos I want to talk about with what I saw at CES 2025 and what we can anticipate here in the calendar year 2025. It's going to be a big year as far as I'm concerned, and we're going to have a lot to cover. So stay tuned, more to come. I'll see you in the next video.